Program. We have a couple of things that we're going to do to cover the lunch period here. First of all, we're going to have a speaker, Abdirizak Farah from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security is going to give us a few remarks. And then we, in the spirit of our earlier conversation today, we're going to bring up an amazing Somali poet to share some of her awesome work with you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Abdirizak, and we'll go from there.
Please allow me to express my deepest gratitude and appreciation to Fortune, Willie, and Isuron, the institute that has brought us all together, and the University of Minnesota and the Humphrey Institute. It's really an honor for me to come and celebrate Women's Day with all of you. I am not the most prolific of a speaker, especially when it comes to women issues, but I felt honored and saw an opportunity to come here and maybe speak about the work that my department and my office, the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, does, and the effort that we are trying to undertake to engage with women, especially young women, and immigrant and refugee communities throughout the country to make sure that they participate in the policy-making formation process in our country. So I am really delighted to be here with you. I will make sure that my remarks are very limited, and once I go over some basic review of what we do, I would like to open up and maybe take a few questions from the community. I realize the political and the democratic discourse of our country has been a little bit harsh lately. And there has been a lot of worries and fears that are related to the Department of Homeland Security. The name in and of itself sometimes conjures up some fear, and it is extremely important that we take every effort possible to address that basic fears. Let me first acknowledge women's achievement. And I've come to this country as a refugee, as an immigrant myself, from Africa, and I have seen the challenge that women have encountered and how they prevailed. Mothers, sisters, family members. I have seen families and communities that have been floated and led through the perilous of being a refugee in Africa and elsewhere by women. And for that, I am deeply grateful for these sort of gatherings and for women everywhere. Sometimes we all touch and talk about the challenge that women face in the workplace or in society in general. And hopefully, as we continue to progress into the future, these challenges will slip away and women will take their rightful place in society. Research has shown, and we try to live by that research in our office, that societies that allow women and upward mobility for women and education always thrive and do better. And stability and security is always measured, can sometimes be measured and directly correlated to the progress of women in education and upward mobility and success. And if we can achieve that, our security, our safety, and our economic conditions are more than likely to improve. So I congratulate and express deep appreciation to Isuron and all the participants that are here for their effort to bring about equality for women and empower women and discuss economic conditions of women and how they can improve. These sort of gatherings are extremely important. And it is also important to us at the Department of Homeland Security. As you all know, the department interacts with millions of people in any given day. When there are disasters happening in our country, we try to respond them through FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security. When you are traveling through airports, we make sure aviation security is in good hands through the Transportation Security Administration, which interacts with well over 1.7 million people in any given day. And people who travel in and out of the country usually interact with the Customs and Border Patrol or Border Protection. Over 600 million people come in contact with the Department of Homeland Security, and the department also administers a significant number of benefits to immigrants and refugee communities throughout the country through the U.S. Immigration and Customs, USCIS, Citizenship and Immigration Services. So we touch people's lives in so many different ways. And if that is the case, it is extremely important to make sure in that discourse and interactions we engage and open up the policy formation process to the public And it is extremely important to make sure that significant portions of the women populations that we have participate in these policies, but because many a times these policies impact communities, sometimes adversely. So it is important to provide avenues of redress when government folks, especially the Department of Homeland Security, make mistakes. Our office, the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, works at the intersection of Homeland Security policy and civil liberties and privacy. How do we make sure we reconcile the two of them and that we do not trump on the liberties of people at the expense of, because of security reasons? How do we make sure we balance the two of them? And we believe that the two of them are not mutually exclusive. Public policy requires the public's participation. And because of that, we have been trying for the last 17 years that the department has been in existence to go out there and engage with the public. And in places like Minneapolis and St. Paul, Columbus, Ohio, and Chicago, and almost every large metropolitan city in our country, we have been engaging with the public, especially with immigrant and refugee communities whose rights may have been impacted by the department's policies. Many a time, some policies that we come up may be having some adverse impact on communities, and it's extremely important that we make ourselves available so that these policies are not being created in a vacuum, that communities have an opportunity to provide a feedback, discuss them with us, and provide corrections when we make mistakes. And in the event that our personnel does something wrong, takes away people's rights, or violates some regulations, it's extremely important that communities have a way to seek redress. And we provide those redresses. It's not only limited to the Department of Homeland Security, the engagement that we try to do throughout the country. We try to make sure that we convene on behalf of these communities. Many a times issues that impact our local communities may fall outside the purview of the Department of Homeland Security, so we do our best to convene on behalf of the department, bring other agencies, whether it's local, state, and federal agencies, to come to the table and discuss. And I will use our engagement process here in Minnesota, in Minnesota or in the Twin Cities, as a catalyst for a better engagement, because it was here where we had some of our best engagement programs in the country. It's only in Minnesota, for example, and it is a testament to the success and the advocacy of organizations like ISURON that we have a women's summit and young people's summit here in Minnesota, where we try and listen to the challenge that women and youth face in this very state and find smart ways to address this challenge based on the feedback that we hear from the communities. And many a times we organize these summits in collaboration with our partners on the ground to just listen and be there and maybe explore solutions based on the input that's been provided by our communities. So we will continue to do that work. But when I got invited here to come, I also came with an ask. We cannot do good engagement. We cannot draft and write good policies if we do not hear from the communities that we serve. If you do not provide advice and counsel, the policies that we come up with will probably be formed in a vacuum, empty of your feedback. And they will always have an adverse impact, whether it is when you are traveling through the airport, whether it is the way that we mess up names, because sometimes names can sound alike, and add to the difficulties that you may find at the airport. So it is important that you provide us a guidance, that you open up your doors, and we will be there. And I came here to that pledge and say, we will be there if you invite us, and even if you don't, we will be continuously pleading with you to help us engage and reach out to communities that may sometimes be a little bit difficult to reach. And when I say a little bit difficult to reach, I mean most of the American communities are busy leading their lives, whether you are an immigrant or refugee, whether you are a man or a woman. You are worried about pocketbook-related issues and issues that have been discussed today that are extremely important. Homeland security policies and issues are not on the forefront until you're about to run to the airport, and then TSA stops you and sometimes start asking you something that sounds silly, that takes away your own personal conveniences. So it is important to be part of our national security dialogue. And through that alone can we improve the discourse that's happening in our country. I realize that there has been a lot of discussions related to immigration and immigration enforcement and deportation-related issues. While the department, an agency part of the department, is being tasked to enforce the immigration laws of our country, it is extremely important that our communities come to the table and provide us some feedback. Are we doing it the right way? Are we taking away some people's rights? Are we making some significant mistakes that push law enforcement and communities apart? Because that is not what we are trying to do. Without the community support, without your participation, then Homeland Security cannot happen. And our office will continue to thrive in doing that protection for civil rights and civil liberties. The basic American values are being protected and cared for in that overall Homeland Security effort. So your participation, your contributions are extremely important. There is no good public policy without the public's participation. The roundtables that we hold here in Minnesota on a quarterly basis brings together a host of agencies and community stakeholders. The agenda is, as a matter of fact, being set by the stakeholders, especially community stakeholders. We try to make sure that we hold on control for government agencies. Unless they have something extremely important to share with the communities, we let and allow and encourage communities to set the agenda. It is important, and that will allow us to address the important issues that the communities have. We do that on a quarterly basis, and we hope to do the next one next quarter. We do it quarterly for one important reason: to make sure communities and stakeholders hold us accountable. Because one of events that we show up, do a town hall meeting, and disappear can only be read as ticking that box, that we did it and we're not going to do it again. So we will come back on a quarterly basis so that we avail ourselves and to these agencies to be held accountable again. And the promises that we be made, that are being made through that engagement live through the year, on and on and on. And that we will come back again, and if we don't fulfill them, then you can hold us accountable again. The department's leadership has taken significant interest in coming out and engaging with communities. And it is through your effort to help us push these issues, whether it is terrorism-related issues, public safety, civil liberties and civil rights, and anything else that can fall within the purview of the department or outside of it. Many a times, and I will use this as an example, the Department of Homeland Security does not deal with treasury-related issues. We all know that, especially if you are from Africa or Asia, or if you are an immigrant community member, that you have a family member to support elsewhere. That you, chances are, just like me, send money to a mom or dad or grandpa or grandparents or friends that you have elsewhere. While we do not control or make sure that terrorism financing doesn't happen, we try to convene and have the Department of Treasury come here and explain to the communities of the safest ways to send money overseas. What are the rules and regulations that impact them? And how do we make sure that there is a greater understanding of the money service business that some of these communities does? Since 2010, our office has hosted a dozen of events here in Minneapolis to convene communities, banks, and the Department of Treasury to discuss these issues. Right? So your participation and your engagement is extremely important to us. So Ron, let me take one more moment to thank them, because they have hosted us on various events in the past. We've held travel redress and facilitation town hall meetings where communities came together, and the Customs and Border Protection and Treasury and other agencies came to facilitate better traveling experience for communities. And we hope to do this sort of engagement, convene with young people and with women, and make sure that you participate in the policy formation process. I'm going to let maybe one or two questions if anybody has a question, but I will do one more plug-in. Please participate. Please be there on the table. Please be part of the discussion. So your participation in community involvement is extremely important. Another issue that has been developed in the last 2 years was the pre-check and global entry program that's also adding additional convenience to the traveler's experience. And we try to make sure that we hold town hall meetings and inform people to take advantage of these programs. And pre-check and global entries, new travel systems that will allow the traveler, if you apply for it, to be pre-checked in advance once in every 5 years, and then you will have a smoother way of going through that. You don't even have to remove your shoes or your computers. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude with that, with a note that deep appreciation to all of you for here and giving me the opportunity to be speaking. I will be around. If you have any questions, please hit me up and we will talk about those. And please take my business card and be coming to the next roundtables that we host here. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be speaking today.